What's up, guys? Who needs a Ben here? So this weekend, Cadig and I went to a cash tournament in Kansas City. Actually, there were quite a few of us from the St. Louis area that made the trip. We actually took 3 out of the top four spots and 5 out of the top 8 from our locals. We decided to split top 4. I was one of the players that made top 4. Cadig was as well. I decided to play Hero Frogs. I was kind of flip-flopping around on what I wanted to play. I thought about playing Machinas or Diva Hero Beat. Those are the 2 decks I was considering. I was also slightly considering Mist Wurm, but I decided to go with Hero Frog because I felt the most comfortable with the deck. Shout out to Rogue for Roguenock from the Edison Discord for helping me with a few of the side deck choices that I was kind of iffy on. And he helped me kind of solidify the deck on the day before. And yeah, let's get right into the list really quickly. So the Frog engine is fairly standard. Obviously, the 3 Toads, the 3 Swaps, the 2 Dupes, not 3 Dupes. I did draw it, preventing me from sending the Dupe block, and actually Dupe Sub did lose me a match, unfortunately, where I went Dupe Sub because I drew the Dupe earlier in the game. 2 Treeborn Frogs, and lastly, I did decide to play a copy of Unifrog. I didn't play Flip-Flop. I didn't feel Flip-Flop was necessary, but I did play Unifrog. Actually, the one game I boarded it out, I regretted it because my opponent had Mask, and I lost. But Unifrog ate a bunch. It ate a book, it ate a Mirror Force, it ate a Deep Prison, it sent a Call the Haunted that was not chainable. It was very good. The amount of stuff that people had to respond to was really comical. And just being able to get rid of cards like Oppression if you want to activate a Miracle Fusion, or just other cards, Black Whirlwind, things like that. Just Unifrog was very good. And I did play, of course, the Hero Frogs, so the Hero package, the 1 copy of Stratos, the 1 copy of Neos Alius, the 1 Ocean, and the 2 Malicious. We play a bunch of discard traps, obviously, so that's the easiest way to make Malicious live, and we do play tuners to make Brionac pretty easily, so that's another way to do it. I did open it 1 game, or double. I opened double 1 game, and I did draw the second one when I had the first one still in my hand in another game. So it did happen where I had double Mally. Not too big a deal, all things considered, but I try and to use it earlier on if I can. Ocean, I never resolved its effect to add a hero, but it was super relevant for being a water. The amount of times I either Rhoda, E-called, or Stratos for it in order to pitch it to special summon Swap Frog in order to activate Miracle Fusion to go for game. That happened a lot of times, and that's a super utility part of the card. Alius being a 1900 beater was actually pretty relevant in a lot of matchups, but especially with like Shirobora. Yeah, that was just the small hero engine. I played 5 Monarchs in the main board, so we have the 3 Caius and the 2 Raizas. I didn't feel the need to play anything else. I didn't play anything like Dark Dust Spirit or any other weird cards like that. Didn't really feel that was too necessary. Obviously no Jinzo because I'm playing traps. I didn't even side deck Jinzo. I just felt like this was all you really needed. I do side deck Mobius. So every once in a while I'll swap a Raiza, things like that, to not go too hard on the Tribute engine. But that is it for the Monarch package. Super small. I never did board out any Caiuses. I did occasionally board out a Raiza. I never got Iron Wall too, which is pretty interesting. This deck is fairly susceptible to that card because you can't Caius and you can't Miracle. To kind of make up for that, I play 2 Junk Synchron as my tuner, and then the last monster is Gorz, self-explanatory. But the Junk Synchrons were really good. I did play against Machina, and the amount of times that I Junk Synchron during that matchup, just a Junk Synchron to bring back like Dupe or Swap, and then I had a Swap on board where I could just balance the Junk Synchron and just pay cost to not even like, it was fantastic. And I just floated on that same Junk Synchron over and over again to keep the bodies up until I was able to draw a way out of the situation, because you're getting Treeborn Frog back every turn, and I never felt that there was a Synchro monster at the time that I needed to put pressure on my opponent with, where I was still slowly stalling for that game push. And what eventually happened was I did attack into a hamster. My opponent had Raikou. They flip summoned the Raikou to pop one of my cards, and then I was able to Junk Synchron, and I had a bunch of frogs. And so I Junk Synchron back a Unifrog. I still had double swap on board with the Treeborn, and I made a huge Junk Warrior and attacked over the Raikou for game because they were at 41 and I think it was like 4,400 and they were like 3,800 life or whatever. It was ridiculous. It's a stupid play. For spells, we have the 2 searchers. Roto can obviously search. Junk Synchron, which is kind of helpful. It's essentially a third one. I did board out Junk a lot of times just because it's susceptible to both pulling and crow. Although if they're crowing your Treeborn, then they're not crowing your Junk Synchron target. But there are times when you don't really have that, and it's preventative. I can see it either way. Sometimes I would keep one in. I would board them out in the oppression matchups, but these obviously get your hero stuff going because we do play 3 copies of Miracle Fusion. This is kind of our blowout here. This is our way to establish absolute 0. There are so many waters in the deck, so it makes sense to play the Miracle Fusions. A copy of 1-for-1 and a copy of Brain Control. Brain Control facilitates the tribute engine, but also facilitates going for the dupe block, being able to have something to tribute for Substitoad. There were times I even went going second dupe Unifrog to be able to like clear a back row and things like that because I knew I was going to be going for a bigger push that following turn, like a Miracle or something like that, where I was going to be like summoning Stratos or something like that and like wanted to make Miracle live, so I was able to simplify the game state that way. And the last 2 spells are Heavy and MST. Pretty self-explanatory there. Staples, essentially. And then for the trap lineup, we play a lot of the discards. So 3 copies of Wing Blast. Wing Blast was very good. Being able to obviously set your opponent back turns and things like that, especially end phase Wing Blast is very good on back row. And then obviously being able to put stuff like Stardust back. And then I played 2 copies of Raigeki Break. I probably should have gone 2 and 2 if I'm being honest. There were times where I was discarding one with the other, or like I did Wing Blast, discard Wing Blast. Sometimes you don't always have a Mali or a Treeborn Frog or a dead frog, or like a superfluous swap frog. But you then again, you do want to make sure your Malis are always live, and you want to have enough stuff like that, and you want to make sure you have enough outs for problem cards. So it's valid to go 3-2 or 2-2 or even 3-3. The reason I would want to even consider it because I did play 1 Mirror Force, and I played 1 Threatening Roar. I was talking to Rogue, and he said, don't play Dust Shoot. Dust Shoot's bad. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play. It was between Scapegoat and T-Roar, and I settled on T-Roar. T-Roar was awesome every time I drew it. Fantastic card. Actually, there was a play where I had to Brio, and I had a Unifrog and a T-Roar, and I decided that if my opponent was going to be top decking, that I felt it was more comfortable to have the Unifrog if they had a back row, and I could simplify the game set that way. And I should have kept the T-Roar because this card is awesome, and they ended up being able to get out of the situation, and I did not have an answer when T-Roar would have let me get another turn. I actually did not play this copy of T-Roar. I played this one because when I took the Dust Shoot out of the deck, I forgot to put the T-Roar in, and I drove all the way to Kansas City with 39 cards in my main board, and then I noticed the night before the event, and then thank you to Chris for having this in the trunk of his car. And he had a bunch of like 1K boxes full of stuff, and he was able to loan me a Threatening Roar. So thank you. I appreciate that. He also made top 4 with Blackwing. So T-Roar was awesome. There was one play, I remember my opponent had Pyramid Turtle, Goyo, and Stardust, and I was going to get blown out. And I had an Alius and a set Dupe Frog, and I flipped the T-Roar, activated Miracle. I had to banish both. I was down bad in that game. I had to banish both of them from my field because I had nothing in my graveyard. Banished both off the field, crashed the Ab-Zero into the Stardust. I couldn't even bring back the Treeborn Frog because then the Ab-Zero would have been too big to make that play. So I rammed into the Stardust and then set the other Dupe Frog into my hand because I had nothing. So that was kind of the only way out of that situation. So that's it for the trap lineup. The extra deck, it's not super superfluous because you have the Ab-Zeros, but the Synchros kind of are with Junk Synchron. There's only so much you can do with 2 tuners. The higher level ones you didn't really make. I didn't make a bunch of stuff out of this. Armory Arm never made it, but you can obviously do it with Junk Synchron, and then having Treeborn Frog come back, and you can bring back a Dupe Frog, sit on it, make Armory Arm, and then if they have like something weaker, you can attack over it, or if you already have an Ab-Zero, you can equip it, and things like that. Catastor, Android, and Junk Warrior. I believe Junk Warrior was the only one I made. Goyo and Brio for the 6s. I made both of these because it's super easy to make them with Junk Synchron and having Treeborn come back. Black Rose, never made it. I never made anything past level 6. So I never made Black Rose. I never made Stardust, Colossal, Thought Ruler. This should probably, if there's an 8 that I'm going to cut, it's probably this card. And I should probably play, because I side deck Fossil Dyna, I should probably play E-Hero Gaia or a second Chimeratech. Mist Wurm, and then the important cards being the 3 copies of Ab-Zero and the 1 copy of Chimeratech. Chimeratech was great against Machinas when I made it. Got to get rid of Fortress with no consequence, which is awesome. That matchup is pretty in your favor, just because they have like Hamster Raikos and you can Caius Raiza them pretty easily. And then Ab-Zero trades with Fortress really well when you don't really have anything going on your board, because you're typically not going to be like setting. And then like Raigeki Break obviously donks that card pretty well too. So you do have a fairly decent Machina matchup anyways, so you don't really maybe need the second Chimeratech, but it makes sense. The side deck, 2 copies of Cyber Dragon. I sided them in a decent amount, but there were a lot of cards that I felt like I wanted to side it in more than Cyber Dragon, so it didn't come in as much as I thought. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going second, because I really didn't want to slim down either the Hero package or the Frog package that much. I would, like I said, even the one time I sided out Unifrog, I regretted it. 2 copies of DD Crow for the Mirror, and for Vayu. 2 copies of Dyna. This card wins the Mirror game 3 in top 8. I did play against I played against Diva Frog. I think this build has the advantage over that build personally. And then game 3 I opened this and he had to Vortex it and a couple other things, but didn't have anything follow-up wise. So we were able to get there. 1 Snowman Eater for going first against Blackwings. I had been hearing that Blackwing was kind of the deck that a lot of people were going to be playing. So I was like, okay, I should probably side a little bit more heavily for that. Snowman Eater being a water monster is fantastic in the deck. Being 19, being able to donk stuff like Shura and Bora and force them to collude over it, because if they have to waste cards that are better than the cards you're playing, they're using better cards than your cards to get rid of it. So that's a 2-for-1 there. 2 copies of Mobius, again a water monster, so instead you can pitch it for Swap Frog. You can always Miracle with it. It's really good when you side deck your 2 copies of Soul Exchange. So Soul Exchange Mobius is really good into when they open with like Whirlwind, one Burial. Really good at putting back Treeborn Frog when they Crow you or Soul Release you or something like that. Soul Release has kind of fallen off, but Crow's obviously going to be very popular. So Burial really helps in that aspect. 1 copy of My Body as a Shield. Really good against things like Icarus Attack and Judgment Dragon. I did use that. Actually, I used it against an Oppression on my Substitoad, where I was tributing a monster with Substitoad. I used Oppression, and I My-Bodied it to get rid of that card, so that was fantastic. And then the last cards were 2 copies of Book of Moon. These are for things like Vanity's Fiend, being able to activate in the same, like drawing it standby phase, Book of Moon, like maybe a Dyna or something like that. Bring back Treeborn Frog, sack it for Caius, get rid of their guy, get rid of their Dyna, fantastic. So anything that prevents you from summoning and things like that. So Christia, Vanity's Fiend, Fossil Dyna. Things that prevent you from being able to play the game. Book of Moon is fantastic in that regard. So those are the main matchups. I didn't bring it in for Blackwing. I didn't feel it was necessary. I know you can like turn off Whirlwind or whatever. So I'll quickly go over my matchups. Round 1, I actually had to play against Cadigan and Dark Calling, and that deck really struggles with this deck, and I was a 2-0 in my favor. Round 2, I played against Blackwing. That was also a 2-0 in my favor relatively quickly. I didn't really struggle until like round 4. So round 3, I played Machinas 2-0 really quickly, like 20 minutes. Again, favorable matchup. Blackwing isn't really that favorable matchup. Round 4, I lost to Lightsworn and another guy from the locals, Nathan. Unfortunately, I didn't take into account how many cards were in his deck. I didn't realize he only had 5 cards. He had a Judgment Dragon, and he was under 1,000. He was at 800, so he wasn't able to pay. I brought back Treeborn Frog, and if I would have set the Swap Frog, I knew he had Honest in his hand, because otherwise I would have brought back the Treeborn Frog and then Miracle Fusion for Ab Zero and just crashed into it, because I was also at really low life. But I didn't realize he had 5 cards in deck. Although, because he would have drawn for turn and then milled out. If I would have just set a Swap Frog, he would have been able to summon 2 monsters, attack, and then he would have decked himself out, and I would have won that match. Unfortunately, I did not see that. I didn't realize how few cards he had left in his deck. Round 5, I played against the Vayu Blackwing hybrid with the 3 Vayu and the 3 Dark Greffers. I did lose that one. Game 3, he had a Kalut and a Shura in his graveyard, and he was able to draw all 3 Blizzards, which was insane. That was pretty clutch draws. So I wasn't able to really come back from that. I couldn't deal with all 3 of them, and he was able to, because like that's the 3rd game where I drew Dupe Frog, and he's Dupe Frog early, so I wasn't able to dupe block. I had to go sub dupe, and he was just ramming into my Dupe Frog over and over with a pumped Bora, and I wasn't able to draw. I was down to like 20-ish cards in my deck, and all 5 hero monsters. I got 6 hero monsters. I don't know. All 5 hero monsters in both E-Call and Rhoda were still in the deck, and I was holding on this Miracle Fusion. I was like, if I could just draw any hero card, I could Miracle Fusion and we'll be okay, and I just couldn't do it. So it happens sometimes. You just don't get there. And then round 6, I played against Diva Zombie, and game 1, it was over in legitimately 3 minutes. So he sets Goblin Zombie, passes, I pitch for Swap Frog, and send Treeborn and then sack it for Caius, banishes Goblin Zombie, and he was kind of in a bad spot, but then he drew Foolish Burial, sent the other Goblin Zombie, and then special summoned a level 2 guy, the evil hero, Infernal Prodigy, and proceeded to Diva into Brio into Mali, and then literally Colossal Armed my Caius, and I could not. It was literally over turn 3. And then game 3, I somehow was able to get out of it with that play with the setting Dupe Frog, or with my set Dupe and Alius and having T-Roar and being able to Miracle Fusion and clear his big board. And it finally was able to not have cards in hand, and I was able to kind of start poking away at it. He did Caius my guy, but I was able to I held brain control for a while, and I was able to brain control. And that was one of the games where I had enough damage because I was able to search a Ocean, pitch it for Swap Frog to get the extra 1,000 because I was 800 short. So I pitched it, was able to pitch a special Swap Frog, and that was able to get me game over that. And then, so that was 2-1, and then round 7, which was the top cut, I played against the Diva Frog matchup, and then game 1, I won fairly easily, if I recall. I did some plays with Junk Synchron, and then game 2, he had Raiza Caius, and I literally couldn't play because I could not get going. He opened Dust Shoot game 1, or that game as well. He opened Dust Shoot game 1, but I was able to overcome it because I opened 6 monsters. And then, it was game 2, I opened 6 monsters, and I couldn't do anything with that. And then game 3, I opened Dinah and was able to kind of do stuff with Dinah and the hero cards. And then when he finally was able to out that, I was able to draw Miracle and kill him that way. And then we split top 4. So the final top 4 was the Vayu Blackwing that I played against in round 4. Cadigan, who we played against round 1, and then our friend Chris, who was also playing Blackwing. So Blackwing, and then the Vayu hybrid, Blackwing, myself with this deck, and then Cadigan with Dark Calling. That was kind of a little tournament report at the end. I appreciate everybody for coming out. I met a couple of subscribers. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun. Worth the trip because we had a place to stay for free. We ate a lot of Joe's barbecue and had a great time. So let me know what you guys think of the deck, and thanks for watching, guys.